Hello and welcome to another edition of Terrible Business Advice. I'm Neil Stoneham, and today we're going to be talking about a piece of advice that's often shared but often gets people into really hot water. Fake it till you make it. Richard Branson thinks it's a good idea, but what about my guest Kamal Hassan? He's the founder and CEO of animation company Prolific Studio, as well as digital transformation firm Kamsoft Technologies. He's a serial entrepreneur and thought leader based in Palo Alto, California, which a lot of you will know as Silicon Valley. And he took his animation company from startup to one that now employs almost 200 people. Now, he's been on quite a journey to get to that level of success, and he started off believing in this advice, fake it till you make it, and we'll see what happens. He'll tell us all about it in this episode. Enjoy. Okay, so Kamal, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, no worries. So you probably give quite a lot of advice. You're a founder of an animation company in Silicon Valley.
Yeah,
Is that right? Palo Alto, that's
yeah,
where you're based.
absolutely,
So yeah, lots of
absolutely.
business going on around there, and I'm guessing probably quite a
Uh-huh.
lot of bad advice is being shared too, given the kind of
Absolutely.
nature of the business around there. Yeah. So you're going to
Yeah,
talk
yeah.
to me today about one piece of terrible business advice. What is it?
So I'm going to talk about, because, I've been doing this and I've been giving advices on this topic. So this would be fake it until you make it.
Right. Okay. And this is one of the big ones, isn't it, out there? A lot of people
It
say
is.
fake it till you make it, including people like Richard Branson is a
Absolutely.
big advocate
Absolutely.
of this. So here we are. Here us, we're going to sort of challenge him on this potentially. So tell us why you think it's not good advice.
It's basically, yes, especially in the early stages when I was breaking into the animation industry, there's always this pressure appear more established that you are, particularly when dealing with big clients. I remember pitching to a major brands and speaking with them with the confidence of seasoned studio, even though we were still scaling. And the key was that while I was faking the level of establishment, I would say that I was never faking the skills or the ability to deliver. And it worked because we backed it up with real results. Because what I see a lot of, businesses or entrepreneurs, they give this advice, fake it until you make it. But, you can do that, but you need to make sure like whatever you are, portraying yourself in front of the businesses or in the industry, you should know or should have the confidence or the ability that you can give the best results at the end of any business journey or any project.
Yes. I mean, there's a certain
Mhm.
level of truth to this, isn't there? Even though we're saying it's generally bad advice, and we'll go into exactly why, this could all go
Mhm.
wrong, as it has done for many people in the past. Um,
Mhm.
there is a sense that we do have to project this kind of confidence, especially if we're right at the beginning of our business, because if we just say,
Absolutely.
oh, we're new to this, we don't really know what we're doing,
Haha.
people aren't going to have the confidence in us, are they? So we have to have a certain element of faking it, but you've
And we,
got
we,
to,
we also should focus on three parameters, right? High expectations, constant pressure, and
Mhm.
risk of exposure, right?
Yes.
So if you're faking something, you are basically setting high expectations. So once you position yourself as an industry leader, clients expect top tier results, and if you are not ready, it can lead to over promising and under delivering. And if I
Mm.
talk about constant pressure, maintaining an inflated image takes a tool. The stress of keeping us, I would say appearances can drain energy from actually building the business.
So there's an element of, faking it to a point where you might say you're established to us, but you said something before about having the skills and making sure that you're not faking the skills that you have. That's important, especially in your line of work, isn't it? I mean, if you pretended that you had these great animators working for you, all these great,
Yeah.
creative people, and actually, they were all just fresh out of college, didn't know what they were doing, that would be a
Uh-huh.
problem, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, it's the biggest problem because most of the animation studio there are a few animation studios. If I'll give you an example, like Will Winton and the Fall of Laika, they were running a successful animation studio, but the problem they were initially when they were scaling the business, that's what they did. they were positioning yourselves as a top tier animation studio, but unfortunately they were getting the work done from the, fresh grads or juniors and people who were not skilled they were supposed to. But yeah, and that's how they got failed and they ran out of business. So 100% in
Wow.
our industry, in our industry, if you are faking something, if you're positioning yourself to a top tier animation studio, you should know the right people to get the job done or get the work done for you.
Yeah, could you just elaborate on that a little bit? Tell us what happened to that company. So they were pretending that they had sort of top tier talent, and actually they
Mhm,
had, some people who I'm guessing was still a little bit
mhm,
talented, coming out of university, but they were fresh. They didn't perhaps have the experience and the skills needed at that
mhm.
level. So what actually happened to that animation company?
If I talk about Will Wellington, a pioneer in motion animation in California, they ran his studios, successfully for years, and he I would say what you call it, he over expanded and took huge financial risk and sought funding from Nike, Phil Knight. So they got the fundings, but they were not spending on the right talent, and that's how they got right. They ran out of business. That's
Right.
far as I remember, or as far as I know.
Yeah, and of course, throughout history, there have been plenty of examples of this kind of thing
Mm-hmm.
happening. I think one of the most famous is the Fire Festival. Are you familiar with that one?
Yeah,
The one that
yeah.
happened a few years ago in Jamaica, where a guy called McFarland
Mm-hmm.
he decided he had this great idea for a big festival that would attract, the rich and famous to come over to the festival. He had some top
Mm-hmm.
line acts like Blink 182 and a few others, and of course he just sold the hype and he sold the idea, but he didn't have
Uh-huh.
the infrastructure to actually fund it, and then it ended up a complete disaster. All these people were flown in; they were expecting to stay in really high-end
Mm-hmm.
accommodation and get all this sort of Michelin star food. They ended up in
Mm-hmm.
tents with kind of like
Uh-huh.
plastic boxes of food,
Uh-huh.
and it was just a complete disaster because he hadn't actually got the infrastructure in place. He just sold the idea, and he was able
Mm-hmm.
to fake this idea that he got access to all this accommodation and this fine food and all this kind of, and it just didn't work, and
Mm-hmm.
it was an absolute disaster. He went to prison for it eventually.
Wow. Oh, I don't. Okay.
But apparently he was recently
Uh-huh.
released from prison and he's trying to do Fire Festival 2. So
Okay.
I'm not quite sure how that's going to work out. To be honest, I don't have any sympathy. If anybody buys a ticket and the same thing happens again, I guess you've got yourself to blame.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, let's go back to your experience because I'm really interested in what you've got to say about this. So, have you ever
Uh-huh.
felt the pressure to fake it in your career? I mean, I'm guessing in your industry, it's probably at some point there's going to be some time where you felt you had to fake it, and how did it turn out?
Yes, especially in the early stages when I was, breaking into the animation industry, there is always this pressure to appear more established than you are. And particularly when dealing with big clients, I remember pitching to a major brand and speaking with the confidence of a seasoned studio, and because that's the tough part.
Hmm.
When I was in early stages setting up my animation studio, meeting with big brands like Nike, Louis Vuitton and other big companies or big production studios in LA animation industry, it was tough for me to position myself and show them that we have the capability to get the work done that you are looking for. And I remember pitching to a major brands, speaking with them confidence, even though we were still scaling. The key was that while I was faking the level of establishment, I was never faking the skills or the ability to deliver. And it worked because we backed it up with real results.
Right. So actually, this was a case where you faked your
Mhm.
position within the market, but at the same time, you did have the ability to deliver. So I think this is the important lesson, isn't it? Really,
Mhm.
the important, because
Absolutely.
with this, we're trying to pull out the good advice. So nobody's
Mhm.
saying don't fake it at all. Everything has to be 100% real because that is just not
Absolutely.
realistic in
You
business.
got to
As I,
start from somewhere, right? But you got to start,
mm,
there should be a starting point. And if you will get into the market, if you will introduce yourself in the industry, you are a new mate in the industry in front of people. You got to come up with a pitch or you got to present yourself. So, faking it until you make it, I would say it's a right approach to start your journey. However, you should know the end results and you should see the light at the end of the tunnel. That's how you position yourself in front of anybody or anyone you think could be a potential business collaboration or a business venture for you.
Yes. And I think as long as you've got that infrastructure in place where you've got people who can do the work, even if it's not you. I mean, this is how some
Mm-hmm.
people do it, isn't it? They sort of are able to present these grand ideas and this is, really
Mm-hmm.
impressive facade, if you like. But then at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, underneath, there's real talent. There's real people who've got the experience to help them and they can actually deliver this thing. And as long as that's the
Absolutely.
case, I think there's a little bit of wiggle room there, isn't it? You can sort of fake it. But
Uh-huh.
let's have a look at some of the issues then. I mean, what are the problems? You've talked about, if you're faking it till you're making it, this can kind of lead to burnout, can't it? It can lead to real
Yeah.
stress if you're not
Uh-huh.
careful, if you try to promise much more than you can realistically deliver. So what else do you think? What are the other reasons this is bad advice? If you fake it till you make it, but you really are faking it, and you don't have the infrastructure or the people or the material or the money to make it happen.
It's actually, if like I said before, if you see the light at the end of the tunnel and you manifesting and you create your own reality, you gotta, give it all you got, to make that successful. Because most of the people, they just, talk and their execution is, zero whenever it
Mm,
comes to execution, any plan or any project or any venture. So if you can, create something that you have not done before, but you think you can do, and the right plan to begin with, because most of the people, they make mistake. They when they if I give you an example, that if somebody is gonna win the project, faking themselves and showing them they're huge, or they got everything that need to get this job or project done. Most of the people, as soon as they got the money in, they distract themselves. They are not able to focus on delivering the right or the best results at the end of the day. So, if you know the way, then you can find everything that's needed to make it successful. The Like I said, the universe, or the nature will start putting things together for you if you have the right approach, if you have the honesty, and if you have the integrity to deliver something that you have promised. So that way you can get out the best results at the end of the day.
yeah.
I hope that
So
makes sense.
it does, yes. I mean, I think that's again, it's the best practice of how to fake it realistically, I suppose. How to fake it in a way that
Yeah.
is going to get,
Hmm.
is fair in a way that
Yeah.
it's not going to be too dishonest. Because
Absolutely.
this
Yeah.
this is always the danger. It's
It's
there's a
actually
fine line,
smart.
isn't
It's
it?
actually it's
Yeah,
actually smart,
yeah,
to start with something. So I would say it's not, it's I would say it's not something that you should not do. You should do this, but that's smart to begin with any journey or any I would say a business venture or any project or in front of any client or any brand. Yeah.
yeah. So there's a certain acceptable level of faking it, isn't there? I would say.
Yeah.
But the danger, I think, is over promising and, really
Hmm.
maybe having sometimes too much confidence. Now, what I want to talk about just briefly is the consequences of not doing that right. So,
Hmm.
you're promising all these things. You've got this great fake confidence and, this idea that, you can really deliver these big things, but you don't have the infrastructure, you don't have the people, and it ends up being a complete disaster. All right. You deliver for the client and they can totally see through it. They can see exactly what you promised and haven't delivered. So what's going to happen there? When have you ever been in that position before where you've
I've
or
been into
know of
that
somebody?
position. I've been into that position myself, because when I started this animation studio, the first project and that we did, it was for for a client, and I didn't know anything about, how we can, produce that kind of Pixar and Disney style of animation quality. But when I started this animation studio and I was claiming it that I'll be the next Disney and Pixar, and that's what I did, and that was included in my page. And I said it to my client that, okay, we have done this. We have worked with Pixar, we have worked with Disney, we have worked with Marvel, DC, and everybody. So you got the right talent, right people. So we should give it a shot to. And at that point of time, I didn't know jack about animation of like 3D animation and all of that because I'm not an animator myself.
Mm.
Because this is something my passion, right? I'm not an animator. I'm not in a story. I had no, experience of animation. However, I always had the curiosity that how they actually produce the cartoons.
Mm.
So I created that pitch. I presented myself as a top tier studio in front of the client, and I got that project in. And the mistake that I made at that point of time, I did not have the right talent. I did not have the right plan to execute the project, and we failed. We failed big time. And then, I learned from my mistakes. And then I realized that if you are faking yourself, you should have the right plan. Whenever, you are faking yourself, you should have the right plan to execute everything. You should have
Mm.
right people in your contact list. You should know the right talent. You should have enough resources. I'm not talking about the money. I'm talking about the network because your network is your net worth, right?
Mm.
So you should know the right people. And whenever you got the money in, do not think about your profits, your margins, or taking the money at your home, buying yourself, wealthy stuff. And, put everything, whatever the amount of money you got for the project, put everything into the infrastructure, hire the right talent, and get the job done and make it successful.
Right. That's good advice, isn't it? But I'm interested. You said that all at the beginning you kind of pretended you had all these, this experience, and you didn't,
Uh-huh.
presumably. So what happened? I mean, what was the kind of negative consequences of that? Are you able to elaborate on that?
Actually, when we got the project in, like I said, we got it in successfully, but I didn't know the pipelines. I didn't know the technology or new trends of animation. So I hired few Indians to do the job for me, a few freelancers to, I was a
Right. So
businessman. I've been a
you didn't
businessman,
have
so I
it.
was trying to maximize my profits. So
Right.
that's where I made a mistake. I try to make maximum profit. I hire the cheap resources or junior level resources to get that project involved in, and it was a big time failure for us. So
So actually, the quality of the product that you delivered
yeah, it
was
was a
pretty
big
poor.
no. It was a big rejection, big no
Right.
for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
And
that
it
was
took
that.
us it took us 13 months to work on that project, and at the end of the project it was a big no, a big rejection for us.
Right. So this is
Yeah.
again a big learning, isn't it? Because
It is indeed.
it's a
And
huge, that's a lot of work.
that mistake, made me who am I today? The
Right.
animation studio that we are running, we got total 193 people today. We are leading the animation industry in LA, working with many big names out there because we made a lot of mistakes. We learn from them. We improve everything. And one thing I learned that if you are working with a passion, never think about the money, never think about the profits. The money will fall in anyway. So I made the mistake to maximize my profits, and it was a big failure. I learned from it, and now I make sure that we are getting a right product at the end of the day, and the money will come anyway.
Right. Okay. So, but it helps, I guess, if you learn that before you start faking it, doesn't it? So obviously
Yeah.
you had a big price to pay for your early experience,
Absolutely.
but at least you've turned it around. But I'm guessing it was a lot of work because
Yeah.
surely once you make a big mistake like that, your reputation is in real trouble, isn't it? And
Absolutely.
to actually
Absolutely.
turn that round in an industry like yours where people talk and I'm sure news travels fast, that must have been quite a tough
Yeah.
ask really to move it around. But clearly you have done because you've just talked about how successful your and big your company is. So
Yeah.
you obviously learned from that. So that's great. So hopefully our listeners can can learn from that too.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I think this is again, there are things that people don't talk about when they give this advice about faking it till
Hmm.
you make it. I mean,
Hmm.
If you're one of those people who, maybe you're a good actor, you can sort of fake it a little bit, but then at some point
Yeah,
you're going to have to straight out lie. And so a
absolutely.
lot of people aren't very good at that, and then they kind of fall apart and they go in too deep, and it gets very
Hmm.
embarrassing. They get very stressed, and sometimes
Yeah.
they're taking on too much, and they are trying desperately to deliver because they don't want to have that bad reputation, but it just all
Uh-huh.
falls apart. So this is another risk that comes with
Yeah.
it. So you've got to be really careful about that. And
Yeah.
in some cases you might be successful with it when you're faking it. People might believe
Hmm.
you, and you might get lucky, and you might deliver something. But
Absolutely.
ultimately, people are going to find you out, aren't they?
Find out. Yeah,
You're like, yeah.
absolutely.
Is there ever a time when you think it is justified to fake something? To pretend something. We talked earlier about maybe you're early on in your business or whatever, so you are faking it. Could you think of any other specific situation where it's okay to fake or not?
Uh, you know, it is okay and it is justified. And like you said, not all the time you're lucky and people will buy it. They will find out anyway. So you can try all the time, and sometimes you get lucky. In my case, I get lucky 99% of the time because whatever I did in the early stages of my business, I was, faking everything up, right? And
Right.
creating everything, making an image and, portraying myself a big shot, a big shark. And, so in my case, I was lucky and that was justified I justified everything. And luckily, people were not able to find out, what I have done in the past and what am I capable of doing. So I think that's what I would say.
Did you ever get close to getting found out though? Did anybody sort of question you and ask for evidence or something like that, and you had to sort of try and think of a creative way to get out of it?
Never, never,
No.
never.
Okay.
I got a deal of $2.5 million in 2019 during the COVID, and I was
Right.
still dealing with them. And the pitch and the picture I created initially when we got a deal in, they are still sold on that, and they have not found out anything, and everything is going smoothly, and the project is
Yeah.
almost over now. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Uh-huh.
So I'm thinking now as well, sometimes, I'm talking about the people who try this and then it sort of gets out of control. And I think that's probably for a lot of people. Very few people
Yeah.
have that real gift of being able to
Hmm.
fake it to an extent where they could be successful. I think you're probably one of the exceptions rather than the rule, aren't you, with your experience? But
Yeah. Hmm.
I think some people do suffer from imposter syndrome, don't they? These are the people that actually do, that are real
Hmm.
about what they're offering, and it is amazing, but they still feel as if they can't. They're somehow faking it too much. I mean, what's your
Hmm.
advice to people who have imposter syndrome?
That's a good question, I would say. So in that case, I would say you're not alone. Even top professional feel it.
Mhm.
Focus on facts, not feelings. Look at your real achievements rather than your doubts.
Mm.
Take actions. Confidence comes from doing, not overthinking. Okay. Find your support system, mentors, and like-minded peers help you see yourself more clearly. Remember, you belong. If you are in the room, you have earned your place.
Mm.
I hope I answered your question.
Yes, I think that's
Have I?
that's a good yeah. I would agree with that
Uh,
actually because I
uh,
think a lot of professionals have suffered this in
mhm,
the past, haven't they? And I think particularly the most the most powerful thing for me is when
mhm,
I've talked to people and they tell me sometimes what
mhm.
I can't see, because they're seeing it from the fresh point of view, aren't they? They're
Yeah.
seeing it from the other person's
Uh-huh.
point of view, my client's point of view, and they tell me
Uh-huh.
things that I do well, which I wasn't really aware of, and then I get a bit more confidence as a result of that. So talking to other people and
Mhm,
just saying, what do you think of this thing I've just done, and what is it
mhm,
that you feel I add value to this. And then, getting people to tell you that and give you that feedback can be really helpful if you do have imposter syndrome.
Mhm.
But it is a real thing out there, and a lot of
It
professionals
is. It
suffer
is.
from it, don't they? Yeah. Okay.
Hmm.
So I think we're talking, we've kind of covered a little bit of the good advice that comes from this, because ultimately, we have said
Uh-huh.
that, in some cases it's all right to fake it to a point, as long as you're confident you can deliver these things.
Hmm.
So what are things that people can do to show confidence, to project that confidence, and to get that trust from clients, particularly if they're early on in their business or their career, but without faking it? What's something that you would advise people to do?
I would advise people to, on three parameters, I would say, and preparation, small wins, and mentorship and learnings.
Hmm.
If I talk about preparations, confidence comes with the competence, and the more I study, practice, and refine my skills, the more I trust myself. And small wins would be, instead of chasing overnight success, I focus on small victories, each one reinforcing my ability to take on bigger challenges. And that's the third one is the most important one: mentorship and learning. Surrounding yourself, I always surround myself with experienced professionals, escalate my growth, learning from their insights, give me confidence, grounded in, well, I would say, in real knowledge.
Mm. Yeah. I think this is really important, isn't it? So embracing that learning and that mentorship, and getting people to, and being around people who
Mm-hmm.
are successful and learning from them.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, you do have to do the hard graft, don't you? You do have to do the hard work in order to,
Yeah.
to be able to project that confidence. And this is sometimes, I think, especially nowadays, for some
Mm-hmm.
reason, a lot of people think,
Mm-hmm.
they look at influencers, they look at people like yourself, and they think it's just happened very quickly, don't they? They think you can be
Mm-hmm.
successful in a matter of weeks or months. But actually, in a
Mm-hmm.
lot of cases, people have had to spend years
Mm-hmm.
sometimes actually coming up, being able to learn these skills and have that experience
Mm-hmm.
in order to project that confidence. And people have got to be prepared to do that, I guess, haven't they? That's one thing.
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah.
And you should try and project. I mean, what I say, when I'm doing my training, so I do a lot of training on communication skills and things like that. And one of the issues
Mm-hmm.
that have when people have when they're presenting things is that they
Mm-hmm.
feel they lack that confidence. So I say to them, you've got to do your research. You've got to know what you're talking about. And the difference that
Absolutely.
happens if you're trying to
Mm-hmm.
wing it and you're trying to
Mm-hmm.
sort of, get by and make it look like you know what you're talking about, it's all going to go wrong. But
Mm-hmm.
if you actually do know your stuff and you've done your preparation, and that's going to come across really, really quite successfully. So that's good.
Mm-hmm.
And being transparent with people. So sometimes I think, you're not always going to know everything, are you? Even when you're at your level. I mean, occasionally
Yeah.
you're gonna have to sort of say, well, we know we'll have to look into this, or we'll come
Yeah.
back to you
That's
on
what we say.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we,
So,
we can unlock all everything, right? We're not God. So
mm,
we're not nature, we are not universe. So we always say, okay, we'll look into it, we research about it, we learn from it, we done our research, then we get back to anyone with an answer. So I would say, whenever people say we know everything, so that's bullshit. No one knows
mm.
everything about everything. So yeah, there are always room to learn, explore, and research about things and make yourself prepare.
Yeah. And of course, that ultimately will help you avoid all the pitfalls that we talked earlier about. So, not
Huh.
getting into those really difficult, embarrassing situations, which can, they could actually
Mhm.
crush your career or your business, can't they? But in your case, I think you managed to call
Huh.
back, and so it can happen. But it's ideally you don't get there in the first place, do you? Okay, so I
Yeah.
think, yeah, we've covered quite a lot of ground there, haven't we? We talked about fake it till
Hmm.
you make it is in essence is terrible business
Hmm.
advice, but there is an element of truth, and there are
Hmm.
times when it's possible, it's acceptable to fake it to a point. But as long as
Yeah.
you're not lying, I think maybe faking it and lying, there's a slight difference.
Yeah.
And in business, I think we accept that in some cases you do have to project things that aren't
Hmm.
necessarily as they are, because otherwise you
Absolutely.
never get anywhere. You've got to start somewhere,
Hmm.
and you never get anywhere, because we talked about why
Hmm.
that is. Like
Because
to,
in that case, if I'll give you an example, Steve Jobs famously pitched the first iPhone before it was fully functional, and the difference his team delivered, right? So you should have to have solid pitch before actually the product or the thing is existed. If you have the right pitch or right strategy, then yes.
Mm. I mean, sometimes now
Mhm.
people might come back at this and say, "Well, hang on, sometimes in that situation, it's a great motivator to actually pitch something which at that point you don't exactly know if you can achieve it. Because it actually makes you do it, or it gives you the incentive to do it, kind of. So, but I'm very careful with this series, and when I've written the book as well, to say that this is not about sort of being too conservative and being too careful, because we need entrepreneurs to take risks. But at the same time, if you take too many risks, and then it can sort of fall down, and you've got to be careful that at least you have the confidence to deal with that situation if it happens. So that's great. Yeah, I think we covered quite a lot of ground there. Right. Well, thanks very much, Kamal. That was really great. So I think a lot of people are going to sort of take some learning from this, and it's great to hear from a successful entrepreneur. What you've managed to get away with, but also what you've learned and how this is probably terrible business advice. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Cheers.
Okay, so there we have it. Another episode of Terrible Business Advice. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you subscribe and ideally give us a 5-star review, so that helps to get the podcast out there. Make sure you share it with your friends as well. There are, of course, other episodes to listen to, including on topics such as the customer is always right and never reduce your prices. Those are 2 of my favorites at the moment. They're out there ready to go right now if you just check out wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll see you very shortly for another edition of Terrible Business Advice. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you soon.